It is here, UFC 4 has finally landed on the current generation of consoles. But 2.5 years on from the release of UFC 3, have EA finally managed to craft the perfect combat sports video game? It's tough to say. While the latest Ultimate Fighting thrill ride is definitely an improvement on the last offering, and therefore can probably be classed as the best game in the series so far, that doesn't necessarily mean the folks behind the project nailed absolutely everything here, and there is still sizable room for improvement going forward. It is important to note that, as with the vast majority of games today, UFC 4 will likely morph and improve as time goes by. Yet after playing the version fans all over the world rushed to download upon release, it's already looking like the company could be onto a decent amount of winners, and perhaps the odd loser. I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are the ups and downs for UFC 4. Commentary team. In the time leading up to UFC 4's release, a lot was made of Joe Rogan's decision to just say, nope, I'm not going to be in the commentary team this year, I just don't like doing it. So, how does the game cope without the podcast sensation's excellent analysis and charismatic delivery? Well, it copes pretty well, so this is getting an up. Still anchored by the deeply professional and engaging John Anik, the game introduces Daniel Cormier as a Rogan substitute, if you will. And the biggest compliment I can pay to the former UFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champion is that you don't really remember the fact that Joe Rogan's not in the game. You just skate over that and really enjoy his voice. He's fantastic. Anik and DC seamlessly riff on everything from a fighter's history, the style, and the way a contest is developing in front of our very eyes. It also never really feels like there's a producer behind either one of them just pulling a string and then they just say a random soundbite. It doesn't feel disjointed. Everything flows really well. I like this commentary, as you can tell. Now, yes, Rogan will always be the undisputed king of the ringside table, but DC and Anik both keep this fight game ticking along nicely throughout. The roster and the many missing faces. Now for the first real outright slap in the face avid fight fans will experience when taking the newest UFC video game for a spin on the old PlayStation 4 or Xbox One or whatever you got. So on the surface, the announcement of a jaw-dropping over 200 playable characters left a lot of fight fans thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to play with absolutely everyone. That sounds weird now coming out my mouth, but you get what I mean. Yet, once you begin to start skimming through the divisions, it quickly becomes clear that more than a few top-class stars just haven't made the cut. Calvin Kattar, Dan Ige, Macy Barber, Roxanne Modafferi, just a couple of the people off the top of my head that just haven't been included, which is a big downer really for them. So if you haven't guessed, I'm giving this roster a down. And to add further insult to injury, CM Punk, that really good MMA fighter who was a former WWE wrestler, he's been included. The heavyweight world boxing champions Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, they're in it. Legendary announcer Bruce Buffer is in it. And Dana White is in this game. But Askar Askarov, I think he was the number 3 ranked flyweight in the world, he is not. It's not good. Hopefully a few of these names are added in later updates, but as of this moment in time, right now when I'm recording, this is not cool, guys. The grappling system. There is absolutely no way around this one. The grappling system on UFC 3 was not exactly what you'd call accessible for many a casual MMA fan. So in an effort to make the all-important ground game feel approachable again, EA have brought in a streamlined version of the guided attack and defense system. So now gamers have the straightforward option of leaning towards the get up, ground and pound, or submission option wherever they are on the ground. If they're scrambling in a certain position and they just feel like they want to get out of there, they can just keep flicking up and they can hold it up there and they can get out. Or they can, go for that ground and pound, start beating the heck out of him, or they can even try and get to a submission. This just makes everything just a lot simpler for people who don't really know the full guards from the side controls and everything else. But if you are a big fan of that and you love the detail that comes along with that, you do have the option to go back to the legacy option, which was the UFC grappling system. And then there's even another option where you can combine the two. So I think one toggle does the legacy option, the other toggle does the more simple get up, ground and pound, and submission option. Me personally, I went left because I'm a simple mind, but yeah, if you like your detail, go right. And speaking of submissions, the introduction of 2 joyous, very simple, very, very easy submission games just makes that entire game of trying to get into a submission, trying to break somebody's arm or choke them out, just makes that so much more enjoyable, and it encourages you to try that more. And I believe the joint submissions it's the R2, L2 system, so you have to try and catch their bar or escape the attacker's bar as it's going along the screen like this. That's getting me very dizzy. And then for the chokes, you've got a big ring that you have to chase the bar around again and link it up. It makes sense when you're in the game, but this is just me doing circles. So, all in all, if it wasn't clear, UFC 4 has made grappling very cool again, so this is getting up. The striking system. So, in a game which has clearly put a lot of time, a lot of effort into trying to streamline and just make everything a little bit more simple when it comes to the grappling, it's a bit of a shame that in terms of the actual striking system, not much has changed and it's still quite dense, let's just put it that way. So you'll remember from the past UFC games, there's normally loads of different combinations, there's a whole back catalogue, and for the most part, it's quite hard to remember each and every single one. So a lot of the time, you just tend to remember the certain combinations that you find familiar and you find them effective, and a lot of people just tend to keep doing those over and over again. There are those people who sit there with a catalogue and go through every single one and can really, if you've got the memory to remember every single combination in this game, you are impressive. I want to see those comments in the comment section below because you deserve a medal. But yeah, apart from altering a few of the more complex combinations, not a lot has changed in terms of the actual striking system in this game. And if you loved it before, you probably are going to love it still. But if you are, let's say, a more casual fan or somebody who just wants to go on this for a laugh, a lot of the time you can find yourself becoming quite random on this game because you just try things, try pressing combinations and triggers and everything, just hope for the best. I'm not going to complain if I accidentally roundhouse kick Stipe Miocic and knock him out and win the world title. That is what it is. And to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, complaining about having a bit too much variety when it comes to striking, it's a very small down. But for me, it is still quite dense. I'm not sure how they can change it going forward, how they can create a system that's a bit more, I don't know, easier for people to remember everything, easier for people to pull off certain moves. I'm not sure if there is a way around that. Whether I'm just complaining and being an asshole, I don't know. But in my opinion, not much has been changed, improved, or simplified in this striking system since UFC 3, so it's getting a very tentative, very small down from me. Graphics and visuals and awful entrances. So again, you may criticize me a little bit here for clutching at straws, but with the last UFC game coming out in, early 2018, you'd be forgiven for thinking there'd be a little bit of a, not even a little bit, quite a large improvement when it comes to graphics in that time. Now, do not get me wrong, a lot of the visuals in this game, a lot of the characters that you see, a lot of the arenas, everything like that, they're not bad at any point, really. They're quite strong a lot of the time. But the same really applied to UFC 3. It wasn't a bad-looking game by any means, but they feel too similar. If you put them side by side a lot of the time, I don't think it is quite that big a leap in just quality for the most part. I think it's more specifically seen in the actual fighters. If you look at them, they're still decent. Like you're not going to look at somebody like, I think for example, Conor McGregor's character looks fantastic. It looks just like him with his slicked hair and everything else. I feel like it's the physical mannerisms and things like that. They still feel quite rubbery at times. You see him strutting around the ring and it's still a bit like, it doesn't quite have that lifelike feeling that you really want in this sort of game, because so much of it is the actual striking, the actual fighting, everything else feels really good, feels really in action, like it would be in an actual fight. But entrances and just overall what cutscenes, let's say, for these fighters and the rest of it, they don't convince me personally. And yeah, let's talk about entrances, because I've got to say, they may be the most underwhelming thing about this game. Now, just in UFC in general, entrances have become this awesome thing, this big theatrical experience. You see people like Israel Adesanya doing his full-on dance routine in, I think it was in the middle of Australia. You see Conor with his music and everything else, and the atmosphere. It's what makes UFC. It gets people excited and ramped up for a fight. It's one of the vital things in UFC. But due to the sea of cartoonish fans in attendance, the clunky gestures that I've mentioned from some of the stars, and yet faceless coaches as well, just really generic coaches taking them to the octagon, any excitement quickly evaporates, to be honest, and you spend most of the time just tapping X and just trying to get to the actual real exciting bit, which is the fight. They have got a new thing where you can do like a taunt before you start your fights. Like Herb Dean just goes, "Are you ready?" And you can like up, side, down, or whatever, and you just do some form of a little thing to the audience. But again, it seems a little bit clunky. It doesn't really fit. I think it needs to be, there's so many seamless parts of this game, like the commentary, the actual grappling systems, everything else. This is something that still feels very sewn together at times, and it's not for my liking. And if you hadn't guessed at this moment, this is all getting it down. So for the time being, it's looking like we're just going to have to get used to looking at really weird, unconvincing crowd members flailing to Conor McGregor's entrance, and a few, well, let's call them rubbery-looking contenders facing off in the middle of the octagon. Career mode. After becoming a little bit stale at a rather alarming rate in UFC 3, you'll be absolutely over the moon to hear that the career mode that we have in UFC 4 is actually loads of fun, so give it an up. Things get off to a really engaging start as you meet Coach Davis, and he pretty much guides you then throughout your entire career. For the most part, he's there in your sparring sessions, but early on, you get a few cutscenes with him, and he takes you through a lot of the tutorials and teaches you how to hit the bag and like do a bit of grappling, and then you have little fights laced in between there as well, in between each little tutorial. And then eventually you get spotted by Dana White, which is great. You go to the Contender Series, which is a very on-the-nose plug there for Dana White's Contender Series. And then you get a UFC contract, which is great. And in my career mode, I'm not sure if this is the same for everyone, but I got offered a fight with CM Punk first, which made me happy. Yeah, I'll be honest, post call-up to the UFC, the mode becomes a little bit, let's say, repetitive and feels quite similar and maybe a little bit altered from that UFC career path, the UFC 3 career path that we had last time. But what it has going for it, the few alterations it does make, more than make up for that. You now get the chance to bring fighters from outside of your camp into your training camp to learn their specific signature moves and everything else. And that felt like a really cool, ambitious step forward to help forge these new relationships with fighters in the real world. Because that's what happens with fighters. They form relationships with people training with them and learn new skills from them. Also, social media plays a little bit bigger role in this career mode than what it did in UFC 3. Obviously, you had it in UFC 3 a little bit just to promote your fights, which you can still do in this, but for the most part, it's used as a platform to start beef with people, which is, let's be honest, that's what social media is. The only downside of this, and it's like maybe a mini down within this up, is the fact that nothing ever really comes of the keyboard feuding that you have with these other people. It's occasionally, maybe once, I'm trying to think back now, yeah, you actually have a fight come in the end of it. It actually culminates in a big grudge match. But for the most part, it just means you piss people off to the point where they're not going to come and train with you, which, what a shame. You've got that many other fighters to choose from, you don't really miss them. Lastly, we've had fighter evolution points introduced as well into this career mode, which I think are really great. They can be earned when you're doing sparring, when you're in your actual in-game fights, the fights that you get contracted for. Also, you learn, the more you use strikes and grappling, whatever techniques you're using in the actual cage or your sparring, the better they actually get. So they improve as you go, the more you use them, which is, again, quite like real life, which is quite good. Also, the evolution points can be used to specifically, depending on what you want to do, you can tailor the way your fighter improves, so you can tailor their attributes. So again, it's another really nice personal touch. Every single fighter feels different because you're choosing exactly how they improve and when they do. So all in all, the career mode doesn't completely change the campaign game by any means, but the new additions and attempts to improve on the training camp of the past help give the game just a bit more longevity. It makes you want to play it for a little bit longer. KUMITE and backyard arenas. Right, so away from the more familiar and probably expected like MGM Grand Arenas and even the new UFC Apex thing that they brought in, the setting, that one, EA have given us two of the balmiest, craziest, most awesome arenas we've ever had in a UFC game, so they are both getting an up. Taking clear inspiration from the Jean-Claude Van Damme starring Bloodsport, first we have the KUMITE Arena. My goodness. So you get flaming torches lighting this awesome arena that's just surrounded by ropes held up in stumps and everything else. It just looks like Bloodsport. It's great. And yeah, then your fighter gets decked out in gladiator shorts and you got rope wraps and everything. It's fantastic. And the actual sounds when you're hitting people, it sounds like an arcade game. So it's just, I love it. I really love the KUMITE mode, and that's probably the mode I've played the most, I'd say, since I've got it. It's fantastic. You're going to love it. And then we also have the backyard setting, which will then kit out whoever you've chosen to go into the backyard setting in jean shorts, so it's like fighting John Cena, which is great. And yeah, that for me, when you combine that with the stand and bang mode, which is literally you can't go to the fighting ground, you can't have your grappling. They've had that in past UFC games, but it's still quite fun. You combine that with the backyard setting and it just feels great. It's like a proper fist fight, and you can decide among your friends and among your pals and everyone out there who is the KO king, which I'm not. So to sum up, both of these arenas really made me smile, and they will probably do the same for you, I think. Up. Online modes, Blitz battles, and online championships. So UFC 4 brings with it two brand new online modes known as the Blitz battles and online world championships, and both of these are a ton of fun, so yeah, they get an up as well. So the former sees you enter a rapid-fire tournament where the rules are constantly changing, with you trying to beat your opponent in a best-of-3 KO mode one moment and attempting to spark them out in under a minute the next. It's fun. In my opinion, the wonderful thing about this mode is just the pace of it. If you do happen to fail, which I'll admit, I did on more than a few occasions, you can just quickly dive back into another tournament and then just get going again. It's great. For those who prefer to test themselves against the cream of the crop, the best of the best, we bring you the Online World Championships though. So the key thing to note here with the Online Championships is every time you click onto these championships, it's like depending on what hour it is, like it tends to change. There'll be a specific weight class that you can choose your fighter from within. Everyone gets that same weight class and you have to choose your fighter, which now, looking at it, has its pros and cons. On the one hand, it gives players the chance to test themselves in different classes and perhaps use fighters that you wouldn't normally opt for if you had the choice. Yeah, on the other hand, if you're in like a really thin division, if it's a really thin one that's been chosen, let's say like the women's flyweight and the men's flyweight for that matter as well, you can find yourself just constantly going against the best person in that division because it is so thin. The best is normally the best fighter, so you end up just fighting Figueiredo loads or just fighting Shevchenko. You just have Shevchenko against Shevchenko, which if you have the chance to beat Shevchenko, you beat Shevchenko. But there is absolutely no question that this mode, this real online elite mode, puts you against the best. So if you're not feeling quite up to it, maybe it is safe to stick with the Blitz battles and the career mode for a little bit, but when you feel brave enough, jump into those online championships and make a name for yourself. And finally, no more Ultimate Team. The mightiest of ups is reserved for the spot-on decision to scrap the ill-fated Ultimate Team mode in UFC 4. So after struggling to adapt the microtransaction concept for the fighting arena, EA ultimately decided to spend less time trying to squeeze even more money out of people who've already been quite loyal to the game and to the franchise, and instead they've just focused on giving them a more well-rounded one-on-one fighting experience, which is as it should be. But this doesn't mean that they've completely scrapped microtransactions entirely though. You can still opt to buy add-on fighters like Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury and Bruce Lee if you really feel like it with your hard-earned cash. But it's in the AI customization zone where, in my opinion, you really feel that in-game purchasing push, if this is what you can class as one. But I think the key takeaway with all of this is the fact that you can still earn all these customization, well, the majority of the customization things and the fighters and the rest of it through just playing the career mode and just playing the game. You don't have to necessarily buy them. You can if you want to. If you just want to jump ahead and buy the Super Saiyan spiky hair and the rest of it, you can do that. But if you just want to earn it the good old-fashioned way, you can do that too. In all honesty, this move just feels like a really respectful nod to the fans at the end of the day, as EA have happily dropped something that makes them a whole lot of money in different games like your FIFAs and NBA and the rest of it. And yeah, it probably wasn't working that well in UFC in general, but they've dropped this just in an effort to make sure all the other modes available are a blast, and they are. The rest of the game just feels like it's got so much more going for it now. It didn't need Ultimate Team, and we're not going to miss it. And that has been our UFC ups and downs. Let me know what you think of them in the comments section below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, be sure to head on over to WhatCulture.com and click on some more brilliant articles just like the one this video is based on. I wrote the review for this, it's on the website, go and check it out. I've been Gareth from WhatCulture.com, thank you very much for watching today, and I hope you have the best of days because you, my friend, you deserve it. See you later.